Welcome to Africa's Vision Television Network. I'm your guest host, Omar Oshaka. The title of our show this evening is called, We Shouldn't Have to Live This Way. My special guest is Mr. James 3X Alexander, the founder of TimeInMotion Evolution. Before I get to Brother 3X, first of all, I also want to thank all of our viewers who have been watching the program. Your encouragement and your support is truly welcome, and we hope you will enjoy this evening's show as well. Welcome, 3X.
Thank you, Omar.
Again, the title of the show is called We Shouldn't Have to Live This Way. What was the driving force in your thinking when you wrote that song?
Well, first, Omar, I'd like to thank you for having me as a guest today, for your wonderful audience. I want to thank your staff, Gloria, Robin, Lawrence, and I think we have Kofi assisting as a technician. And before I say anything more, I want to give thanks to God, the creator of all life, of all things, seen and unseen, because if it wasn't for the Almighty Creator, we wouldn't be here, and we wouldn't have a chance to. Hopefully tonight we're going to try to be a part of the solution as a part of the problem in this confused world that we live in right now. Now, when I say we shouldn't have to live this way, in all fairness, I have to consider the human family, because all over the world we have trouble that is untold. Even though we have very nice artifacts and buildings and technology we're in a time of information explosion, as they say, but the condition of the people, the masses of the people, is still in such a way that it's obvious that we're not using our God-given talents to actually do what God has us on the planet for, and that is the upliftment of his people. So when I say we shouldn't have to live this way, I'm talking about the human family. But in order for me to be precise, I have to say that I'm talking about specifically the ex-slaves of North America. Because before I have the right to stand up and talk for anyone else, I have to prove that I understand and know my own self. Because if I don't know and understand and love my own self, who else could even trust me to love and understand and know them? So I'm talking about the ex-slaves of North America who, and this is not trite, who were brought here in America in the holds of ships and for over 300 years used as chattel slaves, as property. And over 100 years, we still suffered under Jim Crow and racism. And right now we speak as if we're like post-racism, but we're still dealing with these problems today. So when I say we shouldn't have to live this way, I'm talking about the basic essentials of a human being: freedom, justice, and equality. Now, I don't want to disrespect people, hardworking people, who feel that they are successful, and we do have successful people. But I heard a wise man say once that you can never rise higher than your people. So when the masses of our people are in the condition that we're in, then we can't say that we have arrived yet. So if we have built this country, which we have, if we have, all of our families have given, we've fought in every war that America has had. We've strove for our rights the nonviolent way. And we've done everything that is even scripturally described as a humble people to be free. And we still don't have true freedom. We still don't have true justice. And we still don't have equality. So when I say we shouldn't have to live this way, I'm saying that we should be in a better condition than we are as a people. And I think if we were in a better condition, then that would make this country in a better position, and it would make the world in a better position.
Well, 3X, you said quite a bit there. Let me play devil's advocate here. You mentioned 400 years ago. Let's talk about 2010, and let's talk about, in your opinion, are there any self-destructive things going on in the African American community that's preventing freedom and justice? Of course, I have my opinion, but I want to hear yours.
Well, these are the things that you see every day. You see it on the news every day. The self-destructive things that we do, and I don't want to sound combative, but I got to tell the truth or I'm going to sit here and talk.
And that's what we want.
Okay? And you see our self-destruction every day. It's always that's the first thing you see when you watch the news. The majority, or so-called, we're considered minority, but the majority, it seems as if their crimes and that which they do, there's always some kind of explanation. But when black people do anything, you know about it. And as you mentioned, I did go back 400 years, and I did that because we haven't actually recovered from what happened to us in our plight here in America.
Okay, now when you say recover, so that our audience will understand exactly the context that you mean when you say recover, let's talk about that a little bit. When you say we haven't recovered.
Mm-hmm. Something that most people are familiar with. Mm-hmm. Carter G. Wood's book, The Miseducation of the Negro. We haven't been taught, we haven't been given that which is necessary to change our conditions. We haven't been given the knowledge, the wisdom, and the understanding that it would take to change the condition of a people that have been through what black people have been through in America. We don't associate ourselves to which we should associate ourselves with. We should look at ourselves as the people that Moses came to. We've been in slavery for over 400 years, so we should be expecting God knowledge. We should be expecting that to come to us that God has done with every other people that have been in our condition. There's never been a situation where you had slave and you had slave master in the good book that God's solution wasn't some type of separation or come out of her, my people, so that ye be not partakers of her sins and her plagues. America does not want to admit. America is in denial, black and white, of the situation that black people have been put through. And that's hurting our youth, and that is hurting us because we are guilty of that.
And that's an interesting point, because I was going to ask you, when you say America doesn't want to do this, that, and the other, you mentioned both black and white.
That's correct.
So let's talk about that black component of that problem that you're talking about. How did the black Americans become part of the problem rather than being on board with the solution?
Because we have been taught by America. We haven't had anyone to come and teach us that which we need to know. When we did have those to come, Elijah Muhammad, Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, whenever we have had those to come to teach us, the system has caused us to look at them as some type of monster or something that we shouldn't listen to or something that is wrong. So we haven't been educated by those who have had our full concern.
Okay. Well, 3X, because time is really moving on. And
yes.
one of the things we want to do is we do want to talk about, we want to speak the truth.
That's correct.
And one of the things, and I have deep respect for Marcus Garvey, a whole lot of folks. But look, my grandfather taught me, my grandmother taught me to be a proud black man. So I'm sure there are a lot of grandmothers out there, because everybody doesn't have to be in the limelight to teach you. And so in 2010, and I recognize there have been a lot of miseducated folks, But how do we today get our young people back on track? You and I, we had a chance to talk the other night about the rap songs, for example, that's poisoning the minds of our children. Yet so many of us seem to let that survive, if you will. Collectively, we have not come together and say, okay, enough of that rap where you're disrespecting our black women. How do you respond to that?
Because we're not the producers. We're not the owners of the vehicle that would give us the success in those areas. We've had many of our artists and musicians that have come forward and have been inspired by what is called black liberation. But once they present their product, it's always been changed. They've always been given advice that would sort of take them away from the hard fact truth, which is too hard for America, black and white, to accept. It's human nature to want medicine to go down easy. No one wants to take the bitter pill, but a lot of times it's that bitter pill that you need to actually, you may feel bad when you first take it, but once it starts working, then you have the solution to what your ill is. And our solution is the true knowledge of self. Yes, Omar, a lot of our people have been taught very well by their parents, by their grandparents. And this is what I was talking about when I said no disrespect, because we have a lot of successful black people. But again, I'll repeat, you can't rise any higher than your people.
Well, 3X also, let me jump in here now, because I want to make sure it's clear with our audience, because I think we also have in my mind, there's this issue with terminology. When you say a lot of successful black people, see, it depends on how you define success. A lot of us seem, especially in the African American community, relate success with where you might live, what you might drive, maybe you got a PhD. But if you got all those things and you're not trying to bring somebody else, pass it on, then are you really being successful? So kind of help me out with your definition of success. Because I want folks who are listening to be clear, to make sure that the definition of success is perhaps the right definition.
My sentiments exactly. True success, to be successful, is when you are born that you are able to benefit from that which your ancestors has brought into the world before you. We don't benefit from the strong heritage that our people have brought to this nation, because first of all, we're not taught about it. We're not taught about the contributions. Just about every major contribution to society that America has, there's someone black behind it. Starting with the stoplight, starting with the scanner that when you go into the grocery store, you know how you get through real quick because of the scanner? A black person invented that. The elevator. There's a lot of the technology that we use today was invented by ex-slaves, but they couldn't take advantage of it because they were property of someone else. So someone else took advantage of that. And so our young people don't even know the true history. Well, and so whenever you have a situation like that, God appears. And my whole point is God is present now, and we're being chastised now because we won't stop and realize that we need to educate our young people as to the truth of the time and what must be done. And that means we must get up and organize and do something for self. And one more point I want to say real quick. The best and the most organized organization in the black community has always been the black church. But the black church has to come out, and please, this is no disrespect, but we have to come out of that spooky type of teaching, because if you're talking about going to heaven or building a heaven somewhere beyond the sun and moon and stars, then what type of measuring, what type of planning is there that will go into spook heaven? If we realize that our kids need something, that our children, excuse me for that term kids, because that's a baby goat. We don't call our children, kids. But if we understand that we need to build a future for ourselves, then we would start planning and organizing that we would have something for today and for tomorrow and for the posterity
Let
of
me
our
jump in.
people,
Let me
which will
jump in.
benefit the entire nation.
Let me jump in because time is really moving.
Yes, sir.
Now, we're on the same page when it comes to churches because, and these pastors. I was just talking to a pastor the other night asking if he was asking his church to contribute to the Martin Luther King Memorial that's going to be on the National Mall. He had no clue that that project was even going on. So part of our problem, too, is some of the leaders that we have. What are their true motives in terms of educating our young folks? Are they, and one of the things I appreciate is in the Bible that I see this lacking in our community is wisdom, the lack of wisdom. I don't see that being passed on to our kids. And look, 3X, when I look at the absent fathers, I understand about the elevators. I mean, we had a lot of African American folks who've developed and invented a whole lot of things we haven't gotten credit for. But here's my concern. Since I've been on this planet, you know, we got our men are not taking care of, not all of our men, but we have a number of our men who are not taking care of our children. I did a program the other week, 72% of the mothers having children born out of wedlock, 72%. In D.C., 3 out of 10 children are in poverty. So here's the challenge for me, because I hear what you're saying, but why is it that a young man who's 19 or 20 years old don't know that he should give love and be there for his son or daughter? Now, I know a lot of folks say, okay, that there's a connection with slavery. I'm not saying it's not, because I don't really know the answer. That's one reason why I try to get into these shows, to try to find the answer. But what I'm concerned about is with the present. Why are these young brothers not taking care of their kids, even if they can't stand the mother? I mean, I have a tremendous respect for mothers because many of them are at the point of death, close to death when they give birth. So what has happened as to why some of our young men, and unfortunately it seems like a number of them, and look, I know there's a connection to the jobs, if they don't have jobs, but then it makes me wonder, because as you were talking before, I thought about all these black historical colleges, all these graduates. What are we doing collectively? And let me just say this too. The Tea Party's out there because they upset with President Obama. They got their own selfish interests. But collectively, in a very visible way, where are the African Americans say, look, don't be drawing no mustache on President Obama, making him looking like some Hitler. Where are we? We were out there to put him in the office, but where have we been with all this negative and nasty talk? So I'm just saying, 3X, my concern is, how do we turn this thing around? How do we stop having our young men going to prison? And let me just say this too, because I know we got some crooked judges, and I know a lot of our young men get shipped to prison, and it's not their fault. But sometimes too, like a poem I wrote, sometimes we don't use common sense. We do some crazy stuff.
That's true.
Now, one thing you talked about though, real quick, I want you to kind of highlight this, 3X. You and I were talking the other night, we talked about at one time with Motown, how people like Smokey Robinson, for example, how he did a lot of singing about love. I got one of his albums here. Are You Still Here? Old Fashioned Love. The Temptations, My Girl. The rap music seemed to have, again, we're using other language, but you talked about how the singing about love disappeared. Can you talk about that real quick again? I know you may have hit on it a little early in the discussion, but I think that's kind of critical. Because maybe when we were singing about love, maybe we were more loving collectively.
Well, Omar, you said a lot, but just for your listening audience and for myself, I want to backtrack for 1 second and let you know that, again, it does go back to slavery, because when you're in slavery, you were property. You didn't have to take care of your wife or your children. You didn't have them. They were property of the slave master. He could sell whoever he wanted. And then coming up to the modern times, when in order for the young lady to get assistance from the government, see, these things haven't changed. You couldn't have a man around. If the father was around, then she didn't get that welfare check. And so we have to understand that this, you might not want to call it a conspiracy. You can call it whatever you want. But the truth is, we still have been treated as property, and we haven't come together as a people, because the only we can do this through the knowledge of God, only we, and the knowledge of self. Only we can bring ourselves out of the condition that we've been placed in, because unfortunately, I have to say, someone who didn't treat you right, you don't expect them to turn around and to teach you right. That respect is going to have to come from us. Now, the next part of your question was about the love. Excellent example. If you think about in the days of Motown, see, you had Elijah Muhammad teaching the knowledge of self. You had Minister Louis Farrakhan, who's still with us present today, and I wish more people would listen to that man. You had Malcolm X. And so when these artists heard these, the truth about themselves, the true love was coming out. So you could hear in the lyrics of Smokey Robinson, it was true love. I will build you a castle with a tower so high that it reaches the moon. I'll get the melody from Birds That Fly. All of the lyrics and the true love that came out of that, it wasn't the freaky stuff. It was the true love. And I wouldn't be afraid to say, if we get that spirit back again, then a lot of the fallen fighters that are just sitting waiting for the right moment, the right spirit, will rise up again and bring the love back to our communities, because it's not going to be done without love. Right now, we're in a situation of hopelessness. We're in a situation of apathy, because we're following, and I'm sorry to say, but I'm not sorry to say, we're following a nation that is guilty and don't want to look back and correct their problem. So we have to correct the problem for ourselves, and hopefully we can be an example, because if we could follow examples of other people, black people never negate what the Jews went through in a Holocaust. We always sympathize with other people. But if we can sympathize with other people, why can't we tell our story, and then the other people look at our story?
I got to cut you off. You say we sympathize with other people.
Yes.
You think collectively we do that?
Yeah, because this is what we're taught.
Well, let me move on, and I'll try to tie that question to my question about.
Okay.
There's a formula, because all of us. What is your formula as to why you're not brainwashed? And I got my formula, and my formula is probably different than 3X's formula. But what is your formula, real quick, that you can share with our audience as to why you have been able to escape this system? And therefore, by you being able to escape it, you pass it on to your family, so your family is not a victim of that. I got my formula, and hopefully my family is not a victim of this connection to our slavery, to our past. Not to say that I'm totally disconnected, but what is your formula?
Okay, we're all victims, but my formula is the grace of Allah in nature, the grace of God in nature. If I gave you a book full of pictures, and there were 50 pages, and I told you that your picture was on page 19, even though you had a lot of friends and schoolmates, you would probably, when you open the book, go straight to your picture first. Make sure you was all right, then you go back and check everything else out. My knowledge that when I read the Bible now, I look at self, I look at our people, and I look for us in that book. I look for our condition. I see so many examples that point to the black man and woman of America.
Okay. You know, 3X time has really moved on. You know, when you talk about loving self and self-reliance, because it reminds me of the interview I heard today with Miss Jackson and Oprah Winfrey, where Miss Jackson said that Michael felt so ugly because of his appearance. I guess we're going to probably have to do another show, because we do want you to perform the song From Shackles to Knowledge. Real quick, we're going to just kind of ask our audience to stay tuned as we set the stage for you to do a quick version of Shackles to Knowledge. And we'll have to have you back, but we definitely want to hear part of that song.
Thank you very much. Okay. Appreciate that. This song is called From Shackles to Knowledge. I wrote it right after the Million Man March in 1995, and I dedicated it to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan.
Spread out and tell the truth. He came for you. So teach the youth,
Brothers and sisters, there's no time to lose. Shackles to knowledge, yeah. We've come from shackles to knowledge, and there's no doubt he came for you to bring you out. So, my brethren, let's stand and shout down. Shackles to knowledge, praise Allah. From the first time that I saw the light, I knew that it was true, that the kingdom of the mighty God would evolve from me and you. There was a light, but the darkness, yeah, perceived it not. The wisdom of our God we had forgot. So, my brethren, forsake him not now. Shackles to knowledge, he's the way. We've come from shackles to knowledge, and there's no doubt he came for you. He want to bring you out, and so, my brethren, let's stand and shout now. Shackles to knowledge, yeah. Oh, now Satan, he is angry now. He knows his time is through, because the children of the mighty God will express our point of view. It was like poetry in motion, yeah. He made his stand. He had the face of a righteous man. So, my brethren, stand if you can. Shackles to knowledge, yeah. We've come from shackles to knowledge, yeah. And there's no doubt he came for you. He's gonna bring you out, and so, my brethren, let's stand and shout now. Shackles to knowledge, yeah. And now the time has come. We must face the God of truth. When self starts accusing self.